The air above the Blackwater was thick with summer's damp heat, threatening storm but holding its breath as if the whole of Westeros waited for one question to be answered. Who would burn? Tyrion Lannister stood alone atop the battlements of Maegor's Holdfast, armored in the polished steel his sister had reluctantly paid a mastersmith to shape for a man half a man's size. Sweat glazed his brow beneath the crimson-lined visor. Yet it was not the armor's weight that dragged at him. It was the green promise sloshing in the pots lined thick as archers along the wall, that foul, shimmering wildfire whose surface caught every faint torch glow and threw it back as emerald malevolence. He could smell it even now, a sweetness like rotting orchard fruit masking something caustic enough to scour lungs. The alchemists swore by their precious substance. Fire that water could not quench, that flesh could not withstand, that stone itself might crack beneath. Tyrion had believed them, had planned to loose it upon Stannis Baratheon's fleet when the usurper came sailing up the Blackwater. But ravens had flown south from the king's road in the night, bearing tidings that turned every careful calculation to ash. Tywin Lannister marched, not to relieve the city as Cersei had boasted, but to claim it, at sword point if need be, on his own harsher terms. A fortnight ago, the Lion of Casterly Rock had written of a grand convergence with the Tyrell host. Yet news now told of quarrel and fracture. Tyrell men lagged 3 days behind, their captains haggling with Tywin's envoys over spoils and precedence. Tywin would not wait. He pressed on with 20,000 Lannister spears, intent, some whispered, on removing the dwarf who denied him credit for Joffrey's throne. Tyrion's tongue felt swollen against his teeth. He could almost taste the irony. Sweet as Dornish red and twice as dangerous. Use the wildfire, he had urged the small council when Stannis threatened. Now only he knew the full stores still hidden beneath the city, for he alone had doubled the order behind his father's back. Cersei had laughed at the extravagance. Pyromancers had cackled with glee, and now those excess jars waited, glimmering, for a foe no one had foreseen. Boot steps echoed on stone behind him. Bronn emerged, lean as a whip, mail shirt dark with oil and summer dust. "The men are placed as you said," he reported, voice low. "Blocked the mud gate solid. Any who try to open it take an arrow for their trouble. But your sister's been asking why her gold cloaks aren't on the walls." "Gold cloaks are loyal to whoever pays them," Tyrion muttered. "Let them guard the Red Keep, where her royal highness thinks safety dwells. My cell's words will hold the river." Bronn's glance swept the ordered lines of tall clay pots. "Ugly stuff," he said. "You sure you want this turned on your own lot? One spark wrong and we're roasting inside these walls." "Our own lot," Tyrion echoed, tasting bitterness. "Ask yourself, Bronn. Does my lord father still count me among his own?" Bronn shrugged a single shoulder. "He'll count you once you're the only lion left alive in King's Landing." The Sellsword's smile was thin. "Not that I'd stake coin on it." Tyrion raised a hand. In the yard below, a horn sounded, long, low, and mournful. The water tower lookout had sighted movement along the Rose Road. Dust clouds, banners bright as autumn leaves. Crimson, gold, the roaring lion, advancing. A sickening pride twined with dread in Tyrion's chest. That was House Lannister in all its grandeur. His name, his blood, and if he faltered now, their boots would grind him into the flagstones of the throne room. He forced himself to step away from the parapet. Below, the riverfront streets lay strangely hushed. Shopfronts shuttered, shutters barred, doorways bolted. Only the scuttling hush of fearful city folk slipping into cellars broke the quiet. They had heard rumors. Wildfire, and the dwarf who would drown the world in green flame. Tyrion's own men assembled at the foot of the rampart stairs. 50 Sellswords Bronn had vetted for coin over honor. Another 50 he trusted because Podrick swore their pockets jingled heavier now than yesterday. They wore patches sewn hastily to their cloaks. A black field, a golden chain. Tyrion's new sigil, chosen not for lineage but for bitter practicality. Chains could bind monsters or pull gates. Chains, he had discovered, were honest. "Positions," Tyrion called. His voice echoed along the wall walk. Torchbearers advanced, each holding a long wooden pole tipped with pitch and oily rags. Pyromancers followed, robed in sooty green, muttering prayers to gods older than the faith. Their chief, Halene the Pyromancer, clutched a ledger of numbers Tyrion alone understood. A tally of death should those jars shatter below the right bridge arch. Bronn eyed the torches skeptically. All it takes is one gust and poof. You think I haven't considered that? Tyrion snapped, sharper than he intended. We light on my command, not before. He glanced to the inner stair, where Podrick Payne struggled up with a bundle of sigil flags. The boy's face was pale but determined. Tyrion ruffled his head, steel-clad gauntlet clinking against hair dusty from the climb. Raise my standard on the King's Gate, he said. If the trebuchet's fire stones slathered in fire oil, I want our men to know which ones to duck. Podrick swallowed. Yes, my lord. Bronn watched the lad depart, then turned back. If Tywin breaks through, he'll flay us both for traitors. If Tywin breaks through, Tyrion said, I doubt flaying will be the worst of it. Keep your men ready, and remember the sum I promised. He paused. Double it if we live. Bronn's grin returned, wolf-quick. That's the speech I was waiting for. The horns blared again. Nearer now, the rumble of iron-shod boots above the river's lap. Tyrion ascended the last flight, stepping onto a platform overlooking the mud gate itself. Through the arrow slit he glimpsed the approach. Crimson tide between the charred remains of siege tower Stannis had abandoned. Tywin's outriders rode foremost, plate polished to mirror shine, red cloaks snapping in the rising wind. As they drew closer, city archers knocked arrows but held. No enemy, by the king's edict, yet. Among the riders a tall banner waved, a golden lion rampant upon crimson. Beneath it, armored shape astride a destrier the color of fresh blood. Even at this distance, Tyrion knew the jut of that helm, the arrogance of that spine. Lord Tywin himself, come not in stealth but in pageant. A trumpet blast rang out from below the gate. Open, in the name of your liege lord, a herald cried. Tywin of House Lannister commands entry. Silence answered him. On the rampart, Bronn spat over the side. He expects us to bow, march out, and kneel. Tyrion's fingers closed on the cool stone parapet. Every childhood memory of red gold tapestries, of father's measured reprimands, of silence at a long table returned like ghosts. Not today. He raised an arm. One by one, his torchbearers thrust their brands into waiting braziers, flame curling bright yellow. Atop the gatehouse roof, Halene lifted his ledger and shouted in sing-song Valyrian. The words carried the weight of antique sorcery, awakening the Wildfire's sleeping fury. Below, Lord Tywin's herald shouted again, confusion edging his confidence. Open, Tyrion nodded to a drummer. A single beat answered. Chains clanked. Portcullis winches drew, not to raise but to cinch tighter, locking every grate. City men who weeks earlier had cheered the hands returned now stared in disbelief at the closed path. They had thought Tywin their salvation. Instead, he was walled out by his son. If father wished to witness dwarf's treachery, Tyrion would make it memorable. He raised his voice, calling through a stamped tin speaking horn. Lord Tywin Lannister, King's Landing thanks you for arriving, but the city's safety cannot be risked. Decamp your host beyond bowshot, and we will parley. The herald wheeled. Tywin's helm turned slowly toward the walls. Tyrion could almost feel his father's gaze, flaying away armor and bravado to see the half-man beneath. The silent stare stretched, brittle as frost on metal. Then a new sound joined the air, the sharp zip of crossbow strings. Arrows lanced upward from Tywin's outriders, pattering against stone. A hiss ran through Tyrion's men. Some ducked. An arrow clattered inches from Bronn's boot, skittered away. So much for parley, Bronn observed. Tyrion drew a steadying breath. Bronn, trebuchet signals. For tall frames loomed behind the walls, ropes coiled, slings drooping with spheres bound in linen and soaked in lamp oil. At his order, teams hauled, gears ratcheting. The slings arced up, and on the downswing hurled their cargo over the battlements. Each sphere struck the packed earth outside the gate with a muffled thump, splitting to release black pools that slithered, slow and viscous, across Tywin's vanguard. The knights reined in, horses snorting at the unfamiliar scent. Muddy ground smoked where the oil spread. A torch dropped from the wall, tumbling end over end before landing amid the spill. Flame licked, caught, and an orange bloom surged outward. Tywin's front ranks jerked back as fire leapt 3 man-lengths high, painting their armor gold. Horses reared, screaming. Not wildfire, not yet, but a warning. Tywin's helm tilted up, the unspoken question flaring hotter than the blaze. Tyrion answered by lifting his left hand, 2 fingers raised. Helene echoed the gesture. The pyromancers advanced to the row of clay pots and carefully removed each stopper, exposing mouths that glowed sickly green though no light touched them. Bronn whispered, "Last chance to change your mind." Tyrion shook his head. "Everything I am hangs on this." Tywin's line rallied. Banners dipped as captains barked orders, fanning out to flank the burning patch. Archers stepped forward, drawing longbows. The sky filled with descending shafts. One struck a pot near Tyrion's feet, shattering, splashing his greave with sticky luminescence. The drop smoked where it landed, seething. He felt the kiss of death, and for a fragment of heartbeat fear begged retreat. But pride stronger still rooted him. He lifted his sword, a short officer's blade, its lion head pommel newly gilded, and slashed the air downward. Torches plunged into pots. For a breath nothing, then a shrieking whoosh as emerald devils burst free. Flames roared along the rampart guttering green, and arcs of wildfire cascaded over the parapet like liquid starfire. They struck the ground amidst the Lannister ranks and detonated, columns of green jets towering higher than the gate itself, devouring man and horse alike in a hiss like 10,000 serpents. Heat smashed upward. Ancestor-old stone shuddered beneath Tyrion's boots. Screams, human, equine, merged with wildfire's hungry shrill, a sound beyond mortal throat. Men ran ablaze, forms no longer red and gold but formless silhouettes writhing in impossible fire. Steel melted, dripping from limbs reduced to charcoal stumps. A second wave of pots followed the first, and a third, until the killing ground before the mud gate became a churning sea of jade fire. The sky darkened where smoke climbed, blotting the late sun. The stench of burning flesh rolled over the wall in nauseating waves. Tyrion's head rang. He heard Bronn curse softly, yet the cell's word did not flinch. Around them, some of the torchmen dropped poles and retched. One stumbled too close to a leaking pot and his sleeve caught, igniting in spurts of green. Others dragged him down, smothering with cloaks, but the fire ate through cloth to flesh with terrifying greed. Tywin's army reeled. Cohesion vanished. Men tried to flee only to collide with companies still advancing behind them. The outer edges broke apart in panic, yet central regiments, hemmed by green flame, had nowhere to go. Tyrion saw armored knights hacking at comrades to carve a path clear, horses crushing pikemen under frantic hooves. Amidst the chaos, a flash of gilded armor glinted, a rider spurting from behind the front ranks, cloak aflame at its hem. Tywin himself? The thought froze Tyrion. Then a roaring gobbet of wildfire splashed across the charger's flanks, and horse and rider vanished in a pillar of green.
Tyrion Sdalovet bile.
If that was his father, the Lannister line ended there in screaming emerald silence. The firestorm raged, and with it a wind kicked up, feeding oxygen to the inferno. Sparks leapt wall-high. Some soared across the battlements to skitter on wooden roofs of the city proper.
Tyrion Spoon.
Buckets! Douse those rooftops! Bronn, get men to the wells now! Even as his own soldiers scrambled to prevent Ascalion Street from catching, Tyrion looked back to the killing field. The wildfire had begun to settle, patches flickering down to livid embers that hissed atop pools of molten armor and bone. Where whole battalions had stood, only charred wreckage remained, twisted standards eaten to stumps. Here and there, pockets of Tywin's survivors crawled or staggered beyond the smoke, some ablaze, some half-blind. Trumpets sounded again, distant and broken. Farther back, where the main camp waited, heavy cavalry wheeled, and banners dipped in signal. Whatever chain of command still functioned had chosen retreat. Thousands turned southward, deforming into a ragged column fleeing the corpse-lit road. Tyrion's lungs shuddered on ash. He had done it, halted 20,000 Lannister men in their tracks, slain perhaps half with one monstrous gambit. Yet the triumph tasted of burnt copper. He could still hear distant wailing, a hymn of horror that would echo the rest of his life. And somewhere among those fallen, father or no, Lannister blood mingled with commoners, indistinguishable in fire's aftermath. Haleen approached, robes singed at the hem. "My lord Hand," he croaked, eyes wide behind soot-black lids. The substance performed beyond expectation. "Our stores are depleted by a third. A fine achievement." He sounded like a proud child. "Achievement," Tyrion whispered. The word felt obscene. Bronn limped back, hair singed but grin intact. "They'll be telling this tale 100 years. Dragon's breath, loosed by a dwarf." "Keep your voice down," Tyrion said, though no enemy ear could reach them over crackle and lament. "Get the wounded inside. Post double watches on every barrel left. We dare not let reckless fools near them." Bronn's gaze drifted to the devastation. "And your sister? She'll want to see. Cersei's wants grow daily. Let her wait." Tyrion sheathed his short sword. It slid home with a finality that chilled him. Dusk settled, bruised purple mottled by furnace glow, as fires guttered out beyond the gate. The sky over King's Landing filled with oily smoke that blotted stars. Yet somewhere behind that veil, Tyrion imagined the maiden weeping, the warrior recoiling, even the stranger stunned. He had harnessed a magic older than the Targaryens and turned it against his blood. If there were gods, they would answer. He thought of Shay, hidden in a manse by the docks, waiting for a war he had promised would end quickly. Thought of Sansa's shy courtesy, of Varys's sly counsel, of Joffrey's hungry cruelty. What beast had he unleashed among them all? "Bronn," he said softly, "tomorrow we bury the dead, but tonight we must send a raven." "To who?" Bronn asked. Tyrion watched green embers wink like dying eyes along the field. "Highgarden. We'll need allies now more than ever." Bronn's grin faded. "If the Tyrells learn you burned your own father—" "I burned an invading force," Tyrion corrected. "And if Lord Tywin still draws breath, he will come again. Next time he may not halt at the walls." The cell's words studied him a moment, then shrugged. "Ravens, then, and wine. I'll send both." Tyrion managed a brittle laugh that cracked like old parchment. "Wine, yes. Let the vintage be the sweet red of the arbor, the kind father favored in better days. Perhaps, if fate were kind, they would share a cup once more, and talk of all that fire could not cleanse between them." Yet as he descended the battlement, torchlight flickering off pooled sweat and dried ash, Tyrion sensed a truth growing like shadow behind him. Tonight he had broken the game's first rule. He had shown the realm a lion could turn on its kin. In doing so, he had lit more than wildfire. He had lit civil war. Some hours later, the throne room lay draped in uneasy silence, broken only by the clatter of a single pair of mailed boots. Tyrion's footsteps rang too loud, echoing among pillars of red marble carved as dragons. The Iron Throne loomed ahead, 1,000 blades twisted together, an ugly monument to conquest. Joffrey perched upon it, legs swinging, crown askew. The Boy King's eyes shone wide, hungry for new tales of gore. Cersei stood beside, hair disheveled, goblet clutched tight. She looked Tyrion over. Soot-smudged face, crusted blood at one temple where flying debris had grazed him. Her lip curled half in disdain, half in fear. "Is it done?" she asked. Tyrion halted below the throne steps. "Tywin's host has been repelled. The city stands." Joffrey clapped. "I knew you would smash him, uncle. Did the wildfire roar?" "Ser Meryn says it burns a man till he melts like candle wax." "It roared," Tyrion said. He wondered if the boy grasped that his own grandsire had been among those wax figures. Perhaps mercy lay in ignorance for now. "We will need to strengthen the walls come morning, your grace, and ready stores of food. Siege may yet follow." Cersei's green eyes glittered. "You used father's fire on father." The accusation was soft, deadly. "I used the king's fire," Tyrion answered, "against a force that threatened the throne." "The throne he meant to protect," she flared. Tyrion bowed his head. "That remains to be seen." Across the hall, Varys emerged from shadow, robes whispering. "Gnats buzz already, my lords." Word spreads of green demons along the Rose Road. Flea Bottom sings songs of the imp's curse. Songs? Joffrey's interest twitched. "I want them silenced. Anyone who mocks the king loses a tongue." Tyrion sighed. "A war of tongues and swords both. Your grace, fear turns peasants into poets. Better to give them bread than punish their verses." "Bread costs coin we haven't minted," Cersei muttered. "And the Tyrells will not fill our coffers now, I think." Tyrion's gaze met Varys's. The spider's smile was small, all-knowing. Allies elsewhere, perhaps, Dorne, the Vale, even Bravos, where gold still trumped blood. But each choice carried knives of its own. Joffrey sulked, fidgeting atop the throne's narrow seat. "Uncle, will Lord Tywin come to the castle tomorrow?" The question hung like storm cloud. Tyrion felt weight settle on his shoulders heavier than any helm. "That depends," he began, then forced the words out, "on whether he survived the day's battle." A hush fell. Even Cersei's anger stilled, her face blank panic. Joffrey blinked. "Grandfather is dead?" "We do not know," Varys offered smoothly. "Scouts ride even now. Let us pray to the Seven." Cersei pressed fingers to her lips. Tears did not come. Lannisters wept seldom, but the possibility hollowed her. Tyrion felt a pang. She had been father's darling once, before pride hardened into rivalry. He too felt something twist deep, a child's longing for approval forever out of reach. "Enough," he said hoarsely. "Rest while you may. Dawn brings hard choices." He turned away. As he limped toward the great doors, the hall seemed to stretch endlessly. Hoes chasing him with whispers of Kinslayer, Kingslayer, burn them all. Perhaps Jaime would laugh to hear the joke. Both brothers tarred now by the same green fire of rumor. Outside, thunder rumbled at last. Clouds split and rain fell, heavy and warm, washing soot from stone and streaming along gutters clogged with ash. Tyrion lifted his face to it, letting water cleanse the grime from lashes, though it could not touch the stain within. Tomorrow the city would count bodies. Tomorrow ravens would fly. But tonight, beneath cleansing rain and flicker of distant green along the horizon, a dwarf who dared play God closed his eyes and let the storm hide his tears. Morning broke beneath a ragged veil of smoke. The fields west of King's Landing smoldered, sending up columns that caught first light and turned it sickly green. Small folk arriving to sell barley or fish halted at the site, some dropping baskets to wail prayers. Sellsward patrols moved among them, steering the curious away lest a stray spark ignite something worse. Over everything hung a hush, as if even the gulls dared not squawk. Tyrion had slept an hour, no more, on a hard pallet in the Tower of the Hand. When Podrick shook him awake, the boy's eyes were red-rimmed. "Ser Mandon more requests your presence," he croaked. "A rider's returned." Tyrion rose, every muscle aching. "News?" Podrick nodded stiffly. "They found a standard. And armor. No need to ask whose." Tyrion dressed in silence, cinching a plain jerkin instead of plate. Armor felt sacrilegious after last night. He followed Podrick down winding stairs to the yard, where Ser Mandon waited beside a singed banner staff. The crimson cloth had burned down to a blackened scrap. Lion Rampant no longer roared. Only the charred outline of a mane remained. "The body was too disfigured to move," Ser Mandon said, voice as cold as noon in midwinter. "But the breastplate bore his arms. Gold filigree melted to steel. We are certain." Tyrion studied the ruined banner. "My lord father," he whispered. Podrick shifted uncomfortably.
Ser mandam ofered no comfort.
Kingsguard were iron masks, they bled for no man but the king. And yet Tyrion wondered if even that white cloak could shield a knight from the dread of patricide. He touched the staff. Soot smeared his fingertips. "Have the remains guarded until we may bury them properly. No pyre, stone crypt within the Great September. He deserves that much." Ser Mandon inclined his head. "As you command, Lord Hand." Lord Hand. The title felt heavy iron around his neck. But there was no time for grief now. News of Tywin's death would rip through the 7 kingdoms like sword across silk. Rivals would scent weakness. Allies would weigh options anew. Within the city, some might cheer, others riot. Cersei would rage. Tyrion straightened. "Send word to my sister. Prepare the small council. Summon every commander retained. Gold cloaks, city watch, the master of ships, if any ships remain. Until Joffrey comes of age, the governance of this realm falls to me." Ser Mandon eyed him, then bowed stiffly. "Yes, my lord." Tyrion watched him stride off. Rain still fell, washing ash into rivulets that carved little channels across the yard. Each channel merged with others until, together, they coursed toward the drains that led to the river, carrying soot, shards of bone, and whatever sins could be dissolved in water. But Wildfire was not so easily washed away. Its stain lingered where no eye could see. In memory, in rumor, in fear. Tyrion flexed his fingers, remembering how they glowed emerald when a drop had spattered them. The skin there still tingled, as if touched by ghost fire. He breathed, tasting the damp air. Then he turned toward the Tower of the Hand, where maps and ledgers and urgent decisions waited. Behind him, dawn crept higher, revealing the full scope of ruin. Scorched earth stretching like a festering wound, a monument not merely to victory but to the terrible cost of choices made in desperation. And somewhere beyond the horizon, armies stirred, maesters sharpened quills, fingers of power reached to edit the playing board. The game had changed. Pieces burned could not be replaced. New ones would rise infused with vengeance. Tyrion squared his shoulders, a small man beneath vast sky, and walked on. Continued, Tyrion spent the morning cloistered in the solar beneath the Tower of the Hand, quills scratching while ravens rattled in wicker cages, their beaks tapping the bars as though demanding the words be written faster. He drafted 3 letters in a hand cramped but steady. One to Mace Tyrell offering mutual prosperity and unprecedented influence should Highgarden aid the crown against northern usurpers. One to Prince Doran of Dorne, invoking the old outrage of Elaya's murder and hinting that a dwarf's reign might yet deliver justice the Lion of Casterly Rock had denied. And one to Balon Greyjoy, promising dominion over the Shield Islands if his longships harried the Reach instead of the Crownlands. Each parchment he sealed with crimson wax and a stamp showing a chain coiled round a lion's throat. His sigil now. No maester could mistake the symbolism. When the last ribbon was tied, he rubbed the ache from his fingers and turned to Podrick. "Dispatch them by separate riders. No raven for these, wings can be shot down. Gold for every mile made in haste. Silver for every head returned should a rider doubt." Podrick bowed and scurried off like a frightened hare. Alone, Tyrion poured a cup of watered wine. The morning's drizzle had thinned to fine mist, leaving a clammy chill clinging to stone walls. He sipped, tasting ashes under the sweet. Guilt pressed harder than the iron clasps of his jerkin. He had killed his father, if not by his own hand, then by the monstrous hand of Wildfire, and intent mattered little to the silent gods. Varys's whisper still rang, "Kinslayer." In Westeros, there was no sin fouler, not even kingslaying, though Jaime might debate that. Footsteps echoed outside. Qyburn entered, cloak damp, gray hair straggled. "Forgive the intrusion, my lord. Her grace requests your presence." His eyes glittered with that unwholesome curiosity Tyrion had come to expect from the disgraced maester. "She is in the Seps Undercroft, beside the remains." Tyrion exhaled. "Very well." He followed Qyburn through snaking corridors smelling of wet plaster and torch smoke. Red keep servants flattened against walls, eyes downcast, as though fear alone would keep their heads attached. At the sept, scented candles already burned, struggling against the reek of blood and char. Two silent sisters crouched beside a body draped in golden cloth blackened at the edges. Armor lay to one side, warped into grotesque shapes by heat. The lion's head crest, once fierce, had slumped like melted wax, jaws sagging open in silent scream. Cersei knelt nearby, still in yesterday's gown, wine-dark blotches marring her sleeves. Rain-damp hair clung to tear-lined cheeks. She did not rise. Tyrion moved to stand opposite her, the cold marble between them as wide as their childhood courtyard. "Was it quick?" she asked. "No," he said, because lies would rot worse than truth, but he would not have felt it for long. Her gaze flickered to the silent sisters arranging father's burned fingers. "He burned for our house every day of his life. Now he has his pyre." Tyrion swallowed. "I never meant. Spare me." Her voice cracked like glass. "You staked your claim, dwarf. Congratulate yourself." He bristled. "I protected Joffrey and the city. Father charged the gate with drawn swords. Because you poisoned him against us with your schemes." She rose abruptly. "And now you'll crown yourself Hand? Lord Protector." Her laugh was brittle. "You think the realm will kneel to a kinslayer?" Tyrion's temper flared, yet sorrow sobered it. "Do you truly believe I wanted him dead?" He gestured to the warped helm. "That is the last thing I wished." She stalked forward until they stood a breath apart. He smelled wine on her, and grief raw enough to bleed. "You forget, little brother. I know what you wish. You wish to see me brought low, to avenge every slight, every jape at the banquet table, every word father spoke of my beauty and your shame." He met her eyes without blinking. "I wish for House Lannister to survive this war, and that means uniting behind a common banner, mine for the moment because father is gone. You may hate me, Cersei, but the city needs two backs braced against the same wall." For a heartbeat, her grief faltered and calculation flickered there. Then hatred returned. "You have 7 days to prove your worth. Fail, and I'll show this city a queen can rule without monsters." She swept away, cloak swirling. Silent sisters closed in, laying fresh cloth across the corpse. Tyrion lingered, staring at the melted lion, until candle smoke stung his eyes. Outside, the yard had begun to bustle. Wagons of salted pork rattled through the gates, escorted by gold cloaks wary of hungry crowds. The corpse smell of the battlefield had drifted into the alleys. Small folk wrinkled noses and crossed themselves. Tyrion strode through puddles, boots splashing, mind racing. 7 days, an arbitrary doom, but one he must outrun. Atop the gatehouse, he found Bronn chewing on an apple while supervising the disposal of shattered clay pots. Each remnant was shoveled into iron boxes, then lowered onto carts bound for the next barge up the Blackwater. "Dump in the river," Bronn said around a bite. "Should cool the stuff before it curdles again." "See it done," Tyrion said. "Any sign of Stannis?" "None. His fleet's scattered from the last bout. Word is he's regrouping off Tarth." Bronn squinted west, where smoke still curled. Dunno if he heard about yesterday, but if he had sailors near the mouth, he saw the sky turn green. Tyrion grunted. "He won't attack until he sorts his ships. Gives us time to mend walls and hire new swords." Bronn tossed the core into the mud. "You reckon the Tyrells come marching now father's roastin' on the roadside?" "They will if there's coin and status at the end," Tyrion said. "Highgarden trades in both." He eyed Bronn. "I need you to ride for Rosby and Stokeworth. Secure their levies and grain. Promise what it takes. Titles, lands, my sister's gratitude." He cracked a thin smile. "But not her hand, gods forbid." Bronn laughed. "If I bring grain, will you double my double?" "Bring grain and men, and I'll triple it." "Done." Bronn clapped a spur to his gelding and thundered off before Tyrion could revoke the promise. By afternoon, the sun blurred behind smoke, casting a wan light over the charnel field. Tyrion ordered trenches dug and lime scattered to stifle the stench. Prisoners, cut purses, debtors, and Sellsword's Joffrey would have hanged for sport, were shoved into labor. They gagged, yet they dug. A Septon walked among the pits, sprinkling holy water and muttering prayers that evaporated before they reached heaven. At dusk, a horn sounded from the western watchtower. A banner approached along the Rose Road, not crimson but a field of pale green strewn with golden roses. Highgarden. The sight of those unfurled petals lifted a murmur from the ranks guarding the gate, part relief, part suspicion. After all, yesterday's kin had burned. Today's ally might bloom thorns. Tyrion donned a plain leather doublet, nothing to invite envy, and rode to meet them beyond the fresh trenches. He took only a dozen men, led by Podrick carrying a temporary banner, a red hand clutching a chain. Better they see Lannister resolve in new shape than avoid. Ser Garland Tyrell rode at the front, armor bright, helm wreathed in gilded leaves. At his flank, Mace Tyrell sat plump astride a dapple gray, cheeks flushed from exertion or perhaps the wine skin at his hip. Behind them stretched 2,000 infantry in orderly columns, more neat than fierce.
Ser Garland dismounted gracefully.
Lord Tyrion, he said, bowing. Our condolences for the loss of Lord Tywin. A tragic day for the realm. Tyrion slid down from his palfrey. Your words do honor. The city is grateful for Highgarden's swift aid. Mace cleared his throat. These are my household knights and some levied reachmen. More follow under Ser Loras's command. He rides hard from Bitterbridge, with roses enough to choke the dragons of old, if dragons still soared. The Lord chuckled, a sound oddly high in the smoky air. Tyrion managed a polite grin. Our walls welcome every petal. He gestured toward the gate. Shall we refresh ourselves? The Queen has prepared quarters. As they turned, Garland fell into step with Tyrion, voice pitched low. Rumors race us, my lord. They say Wildfire devoured 10,000 lions. They say King's Landing lies on the brink of madness. Rumors seldom understate, Tyrion replied dryly. Yet the city stands. With your aid, it will continue to. Then let us hope the Reach's harvest feeds your people before fear does. Garland's gaze flicked to the mass graves. Fear is the hungriest beast. Inside the Red Keep, Cersei greeted the Tyrell train in the throne room, flanked by Ser Meryn and Qyburn. Her eyes were red-shot, yet her smile gleamed. She kissed Mace on both cheeks, praised Garland's valor, and thanked the mother for delivering such stalwart friends. Tyrion watched the dance, knowing each word cost her pride. She loathed charity, especially from lords who smelt of river reeds and orchard blossoms. Wine flowed, servants bowed, and supper was declared. Roasted goat with mint, onion soup thick as river mud, fresh bread scarce after siege but produced to impress the Reach appetites. Tyrion sat opposite Garland, sipping sparingly. Through candle smoke he studied Margaery Tyrell, demure at first glance, yet her eyes sought Joffrey's with cunning sparkle. The boy king puffed like a barnyard rooster under her regard. As musicians plucked strings, Tyrion leaned toward Garland. Tell me, good sir, do you like riddles? I prefer answers, Garland said. Then we share a passion, Tyrion murmured. Answer me this. What binds a rose to a lion? Garland's smile flickered cautious. Soil, perhaps, or sunlight.
Coin, sir.
Coin and the promise of a harvest undisturbed by iron. Gift us grain, lend us swords, and the crown will repay in gold thrice over, once the North bows and the Stormlands yield. Garland cut a bite of goat. Storms still gather, though. Stannis lingers. Stannis lacks ships, Tyrion countered. He will find none in Blackwater Bay. He touched the rim of his chalice. But to ease your mind, Highgarden may hold lien on the crown's debts. For each hundredweight of grain, half again in gold within the year. Tempting, Garland admitted. Yet my father measures risk in banners, not ledgers. Might he have a seat on the council, perhaps? Tyrion's lips curved. When the council meets, a chair shall bear his sigil. He raised the chalice. To binding blooms. They drank. Across the table, Cersei's smile froze. She sensed bargains slipping beyond her grasp but could not halt supper to pry them open. Tyrion savored the silent victory. After the feast, Tyrion retreated to his solar with reports piling like fallen leaves. Scouts spotted Greyjoy sails off Crackclaw Point, raiders picking the bones of villages abandoned to war. Westerling outriders harried Lannisport, emboldened by Tywin's death. And word from the twins. Lord Walder muttered that no ravens carrying the king's coin had arrived in months. He penned more letters until dawn crept blood-red over the city. Soot still lingered, yet a breeze had turned, blowing smoke seaward. Birds dared chirp again. On the fourth day, Jaime Lannister rode through the Pike Gate unannounced, cloak travel-stained, hair grown shaggy. Whispers reported he rode alone, ahead of a single escort bearing Roose Bolton's flayed-man banner. Tyrion hurried to meet him in the courtyard where stable boys stared, half afraid the Kingslayer was Spectre. Jaime dismounted stiffly, eyes sweeping the blackened walls. For once his easy arrogance seemed dulled. Tyrion stepped forward, uncertain. "Brother." Jaime's gaze snagged on his face, lingered at the ruin beyond the gate, then returned. He opened his mouth, but a choking noise escaped instead, laughter strangled by disbelief. "Gods, imp, what in seven hells did you do?" Tyrion's throat tightened. "Defended the city. By roasting father's army?" Jaime's gauntlet gestured to the gray field where no green flame flickered now, only char stains. "I rode half the night through that cemetery. Bolton's men told me you turned Treacher's fire on your own. I called it lies." He barked a humorless laugh. "Seems truth wears Wildfire's color." Tyrion felt the familiar urge to deflect with jest. But this was Jaime, the one person whose scorn still mattered. "Father would have killed me, Jaime. He marched on the city, blades drawn. He'd have boxed your ears more like." Jaime yanked off his gauntlet, and his golden hand flashed as dawn. "Now he's gone, and you sit in his chair?" "I sit because the realm must be governed." Tyrion's temper flared. "Would you rather Joffrey sign decrees? Or Cersei?" Jaime's shoulders fell. "Maybe I would." He rubbed his temples. "I fought in the Riverlands, watched small folk butchered by wolves and lions alike. I rode here believing father's arrival would end the madness. Instead I find a pyre and a boy king who thinks himself Aegon reborn." He looked up, eyes dark. "Tell me there was no other way." Tyrion imagined alternative paths: parley, surrender, flight. Each ended with iron on his wrists or a head on display. He shook his head. There was no other way. Jaime studied him, wheels turning behind green-gold eyes. At last he sighed. "Then may the gods forgive, for they'll not forgive me either." He held out the golden hand in awkward camaraderie. Tyrion clasped the metal without warmth. The cold seeped into his palm. Later that day, the small council convened. Mace Tyrell claimed father's stool as master of ships, though few ships remained. Qyburn replaced Pycelle, who had died in the panic when Wildfire first spilled. Varys smiled in shadow. Kevan Lannister's seat lay empty, its sigil cloth folded. Cersei perched like a gilded hawk, and Jaime lounged at the foot of the table, uninvited yet present. Tyrion opened discussion. Enemies circle. Stannis to the southeast, Robb Stark to the north, Ironborn to the east, Dornish neutrality uncertain. We must secure coin and grain, rebuild walls, and raise fresh levies. Suggestions? Mace puffed. Highgarden's harvest rolls north as we speak, but wagons need escort. His jowls jiggled. Have your gold cloaks patrol the roads, and we shall keep King's Landing fed. Agreed, Tyrion said. Jaime, you will take 2,000 spears to garrison Harrenhal and secure the Trident Crossing. Your presence will steady Lord's wavering. Jaime arched a brow. The Kingslayer commanding a field force again? Cersei will love that. Cersei's voice dripped venom. So long as my brother obeys the king's writ, he may chase glory where he likes. She turned on Tyrion. But recall, you have 3 days left. Tyrion ignored the barb. Master of coin? He glanced to the empty chair where Peter Baelish once cooed numbers. We require loans from the Iron Bank to pay Sellswords. Varys folded pale fingers. Letters have gone, my lord. The Braavosi wish assurances. They'll have them, Tyrion said, pledging Crownland's timber export and a share of Lannisport's harbor tolls once reopened. Qyburn cleared his throat. There remains the matter of refugees. Thousands shiver. In Flea Bottom, if winter comes, plague will follow. Let's hope winter waits, Tyrion murmured, but he noted the concern. We'll commission granaries south of Visenya's Hill. Give them work, they won't riot. Jaime rose. Send the High Septon among them. Preach peace. Cersei snorted. The Sparrow Kingling? He can't wipe his arse without prayer. Jaime's glare silenced her. Tyrion seized the moment. Nevertheless, a holy presence calms fear. See him escorted. Agreement settled like dust over the table, fragile. After the council, Tyrion lingered alone among maps. Candlelight flickered over colored pins, each a threat. Black for Stannis, gray for Ironborn, blue for Rivermen, white for snow approaching from far north. Red pins for Lannister holdings had thinned. Gold remained only in King's Landing and the Rock was days away, bereft of its lord. He replaced one red pin with green glass, marking the burned field. Victory, yes, but poisoned. A soft step behind. Nyes had come. Chaos ignited within the Red Keep. Cersei demanded every Tyrell man man the river walls. Mace squawked about fatigue. Gold cloaks scrambled to distribution points where barrels of boiling pitch waited. Tyrion mounted a fresh destrier, his short legs nearly swallowed by saddle, and galloped to the mud gate where the memory of Wildfire still hung like curse. On the rampart he found Ser Garland directing Reach archers, voice cool. They row at half strength, storm battered, the knight observed. Yet 20 ships still ram. Man the Scorpions, Tyrion ordered. He scanned the river. Stannis' hulls hugged the south bank to avoid submerged wrecks. Good. Fewer pockets of floating wildfire there. But the North Channel remained poison green. He turned to Haleen, who materialized clutching a fresh ledger. How many jars remain? 406, my lord, stored beneath the gate of the gods. Not enough for a river wall of flame. And the wind blew unfavorably, east to west. Any spark might lick upriver into city docks. We hold the jars, Tyrion said. Unless their vanguard breaches the quay. Haleen looked disappointed but bowed. Stannis' galleys closed distance. Drums beat husky rhythm. Archers aboard loosed black-fletched shafts that hailed against stone. Some hissed over the parapet, clattering on flagstones slick with last night's rain. Tyrion ducked behind Crenel, shouting for shield walls. Scorpions twanged. One bolt lanced into a galley prow, splitting planks. Men spilled into water. The first ram struck a floating coffin of wildfire still bobbing from last week. A plume of green erupted, devouring timbers. Tyrion's heart leapt. Perhaps the bay would fight for him. But Stannis' rear ships angled wide, steering clear. A battering roar echoed from River Row. Southron infantry scaling wharfs left unguarded. Inside the city, bells tolled. Tyrion cursed. He had left gold cloaks policing plague wards, not peers. He signaled Podrick. Send Bronn from the bastion gate. Cut them off. Podrick took off. Battle lines blurred. Rain-soaked pitch slicked decks and rampart alike. Arrow fire turned the air into a buzzing hive. From the quays, screams rose. Stannis' men clashing with Tyrell's quartered in waterfront houses. Fires sparked in fish stalls. Smoke twisted with gulls. Tyrion drew his short sword. An incoming ladder slammed against battlement. Baratheon troops began climbing. Heat sand, he roared. Buckets were tipped, sending cascades of red-hot grains onto helmets. Men shrieked, tumbled back. But more ladders came, and grapnels anchored deep into Crenel gaps. Tyrion stabbed downward, blade punching through visor flesh. A gauntlet seized his ankle. He hacked until fingers loosened. A horn blast sounded behind. Tyrell cavalry charging from the city stables. hoofs thundering along the river road. They smashed into Stannis' foot soldiers from flank, trampling men into puddles. Yet the enemy kept coming, grim as tide. Bronn appeared, soaked in blood not his own. "Keys secured," he panted, but more sails round the tiers. He pointed seaward where a second wave emerged from morning haze. Smaller craft rowed by cell sails, perhaps Salader San's defector fleet. They skirted debris, aiming for narrow slips near the King's Gate. Tyrion weighed the ledger of Wildfire again. Wind direction still wrong. One errant jar flung here could send entire harbor to green hell, undoing city and foe alike. He shook his head.
No wildfire.
Not today. Helene blanched. "But, my lord, obey," Tyrion snapped. "Grappling hooks and scorpions. Fire arrows to sails, pitch on ramps. We fight this like men, not devils." Bronn grinned crooked. "Never thought I'd hear you say that." "I've had my fill of devils," Tyrion muttered. The fight raged into afternoon. At last, as sun reached zenith, horns blew retreat from Baratheon vessels. Their hulls, holed and smoldering, crawled back toward Duskendale escort. Bodies floated among splintered masts, coating water with crimson film that swirled atop green veins of lingering wildfire. On the quays, wounded moaned as Tyrell knights herded prisoners into cordons. Tyrion leaned on battlement, breath coming in harsh bursts. Rain had washed blood from his face but could not purge the stench of roasted pitch and fear. He glanced at Ser Garland, likewise soaked but unbowed. "Thank the mother for your roses," Tyrion rasped. Garland wiped blade on cloak. "Thank your city for its walls." He offered a gauntlet hand, and Tyrion clasped it. Evening council convened early, torches smoking in still humid air. Reports tallied, 300 dead within the city, 500 wounded, double that among Stannis' retreating host. Tyrell casualties light. Cersei decried the dead gold cloaks as proof Tyrion had weakened the city by sending them to plague wards. Tyrion countered that plagues did not pause for wars. They argued until Garland interjected softly, "Your Grace, our enemies grow stronger with each quarrel between us." Later, Tyrion trudged to the Tower of the Hand, armor clinking hollow. Outside his chamber Shay waited, eyes rimmed red. "A runner came," she whispered. "A girl in the dragon pit died in my lap. Fever. Red rings like garlands around her neck." Tyrion's shoulders sagged. "We've bled men on the walls to save a city that may yet choke from within." Shay brushed soot from his cheek. "Then scorch the plague as you scorched your enemies." He flinched. "Never speak of Wildfire again." That night he drank alone until stars blurred beyond window glass. Dreams ambushed him. Father rising from a green pyre, jaw unhinged, accusing. Tyrion woke gasping, nails digging pillows. At dawn, ravens arrived. One from Harrenhal bearing scribbled note. "Bolton men approach. Flayed banners. Parley uncertain." Jaime's hand, terse. Another from Riverrun. Robb Stark offered truce. Terms included northern independence and restitution for fealties broken. Tyrion read thrice. The young wolf smelled blood in the water. And one last raven, ebony feathers singed at tips. A message from the Iron Islands. "Let waters run red with lion blood. The drowned god rises." Tyrion closed his eyes. Allies burned, foes multiplied, plague brewed, and dragons possibly stirred across the sea. The realm balanced on a blade he had sharpened with Wildfire. He donned plain wool, left the hand's chain upon the desk, and descended to the sept crypt where Father's tomb already lay sealed beneath marble lion. He knelt beside cool stone. "I did what you taught," Tyrion whispered. "Paid debts struck first. Yet I would give all the gold in Casterly Rock to hear you damn me one more time." Silence answered, heavy as ages. Footsteps behind, Varys soft as dusk. "Your Lord Father was iron, but iron rusts under salt tears." The eunuch paused. "There is talk among the ships. A red priestess travels with Stannis, promising shadow assassins." Tyrion rose. "Then I will light the city each night with torches brighter than their shadows." Torches, Varys echoed? Or Wildfire? Tyrion met his gaze. Only torches. Let the wicked fear daylight. He stepped into morning sun, resolve column straight. No more devils, no more green. He would wield coin, bread, and steel. If the realm must burn, let others strike the match. And yet deep within he felt the wildfire still, glowing ember, whispering. Power drawn once rarely sleeps forever. As he returned to the tower, drums rumbled from the western gate. A caravan of reach wagons laden with golden wheat and purple plums. Children chased beside, laughing at mules. For a heartbeat, the city seemed whole. Tyrion forced a breath, tasting possibility. Perhaps bread could outweigh fear. Perhaps walls of stone, not flame, could hold. Perhaps chain and lion could coexist. He squared his shoulders and beckoned Podrick. Summon the council. We draft peace with wolves and minds with merlings. The game continues. And somewhere beyond the smoke and sea, 3 young dragons beat their wings against an evening sky the color of wildfire and sunset mingled, green and red, hope and ruin entwined, heralds of a future racing to meet this fragile realm where a dwarf protector waged war not only upon foes, but upon the blaze within his own heart.